Sorry for that interruption there, folks. Welcome to Executive Corner Expert Talks Canada. Now today, continuing with our medical innovation theme, we're diving into one company that's doing some groundbreaking work with its immersive ketamine-assisted psychotherapy program to support your emotional health. Field Trip Health is the leading medical and scientific re-emergence in the field of psychedelics and psychedelic-enhanced therapies. Game-changing stuff for this burgeoning market. And joining us today is co-founder and executive chairman Ronan Levy. Welcome to the show, Ronan. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Now, first of all, the psychedelic renaissance is creating an industry worth around $100 billion, which is incredible. How is Field Trip positioned to capitalize on this massive growth potential?
We are positioned to capitalize on it by really two ways. One is we're focused on building the infrastructure to deliver psychedelic-assisted therapies. A recent analyst report from Roth Capital came out suggesting that in the US alone, the psychedelic industry could be worth $500 billion, making it larger than even the oncology market. So we're talking about a significant market opportunity for treating depression, anxiety, and a host of other mental health conditions. And what we're doing at Field Trip is, one, building the spaces for the delivery of psychedelic therapies. This isn't the kind of care that can be done in a traditional doctor's office. It really requires specialized spaces that lean into this notion of set and setting, which is you want a person to feel comfortable. And the traditional fluorescent lights and white walls of a doctor's office really lead to probably negative experiences, where a comfortable setting with properly trained staff lead to really positive outcomes. And so at Field Trip, we've got 12 locations providing ketamine-assisted therapy. One of them actually in the Netherlands is providing psilocybin-assisted therapy because it's legal to do so there, and we continue to expand. We're also developing next-generation psychedelic medicines. Classic psychedelics like psilocybin and MDMA are wonderful, potent medicines, but it doesn't mean we can't do better. And so our first molecule in development, something called FT104, is something that's very similar to psilocybin, but shorter acting, so much more efficient from a cost and time perspective.
That's incredible. And what does this FT104 compound mean for the business and the bottom line overall?
Well, it's a long-term development project. As with any approval process for new medicines, you have to go through the 3 phases of clinical trials, and we're about to enter phase 1. But we feel confident in this molecule, in part because it is derived from a known psychedelic. There's a psychedelic known as 4-HO-DIPT that was really spoken quite highly of by Sasha Shulgin, who was one of the early researchers in the space, because it's so similar to psilocybin but has a shorter duration of experience. And with FT104, we modified that slightly to make it a better medicine, but overall the experience is similar to 4-HO-DIPT, which is similar to psilocybin. And so I think it's going to be an incredible medicine. We think it's going to be much more affordable and as effective as psilocybin, which we expect to be approved in the next couple of years. So I think we've got a great next generation psychedelic coming down the pipes.
It's incredible. It sounds like you have a lot down the pipeline there, and the FT104 will be a game changer for you indeed. And I'd like to ask you as well, could you share with us a bit about your international presence there? You did just mention that you have clinics in the Netherlands, I believe.
That's correct. So we have 3 locations in Canada, 8 in the US, and 1 in the Netherlands presently. We continue to expand. We anticipate the demand for psychedelic therapies will be quite significant. And certainly there's some wonderful pioneering work happening in Australia right now with the nonprofit organization, Mind Medicine Australia, who we're big fans and big supporters of, and continue to work with them to help build awareness. You know, this isn't just about creating a new class of medicine. It really is about overcoming a legacy of 50 years of misinformation and politicization, whereas like these medicines are incredibly potent, incredibly safe by and large, especially when done in the proper setting, and create really transformative outcomes. We're talking about medicines that provide near effective cures to PTSD and depression. Not quite exactly, it's a little bit of an overstatement, but it is that level of efficacy compared to our current treatments, which generally don't work very well when we're talking about depression and anxiety.
That's incredible, and I think I understand as well that when it comes to depression, it can actually have lasting impacts on the brain and the neurology of the brain as well. And I believe that some psychedelic treatments can actually reverse that damage. Is that correct?
That is correct. So, depending on which psychedelic we talk about, I can refer to different things. What we see with MDMA, for example, is that in the phase 3 clinical trials that are happening right now, 70% of participants no longer meet the criteria of PTSD following three MDMA assisted therapy sessions. So, 3 afternoons with MDMA, and they're effectively cured of PTSD. With psilocybin, the studies suggest that a single psilocybin-assisted therapy session can provide up to 5 years of antidepressant effect. The reason this works is there's a number of factors, but one of them, as you alluded to, is that what we see with psilocybin, as well as with ketamine, I'm not sure if it exists with MDMA, but I wouldn't be surprised, is that following a psychedelic experience with these molecules, your brain actually goes into a process called synaptogenesis. And we've seen it in vitro and in vivo studies where you can see the neurons in your brain starting to form new connections that often get destroyed when people experience depression for extended periods of time. So your brain is actually growing new neural connections following these psychedelic experiences, which is one of the reasons these results seem to be so fantastic. There's a period of neuroplasticity that follows.
That's really incredible. It sounds like we're talking about some really life-changing medicine here.
Absolutely. The New York Times recently referred to the psychedelic revolution being a game changer for psychiatry. I think that's absolutely true. I think it's true for all mental health, not even in the realms of psychiatry, because the other things that we don't talk about as much yet, because it's not quite as medical, but the evidence seems to be there, that when you talk about psychedelic experiences, they tend to lead to improvements in creativity, improvements in empathy, and openness to other people's viewpoints, all these wonderful characteristics and traits that I think there can't be enough of in the world. Most people have that experience with psychedelics. And so we're not just talking about addressing mental health conditions, although we certainly are talking about that. We're also talking about addressing some of the more challenging and vexing problems in society where we have so much polarization happening. And so I'm incredibly excited about the future and what psychedelics will hold in terms of our approach to psychiatry as well as mental and emotional health and well-being.
Well, that is excellent to hear. It sounds like there's a lot of unexplored territory for you to get into there over the next few years. So it's excellent to hear.
Absolutely.
And how about the challenges and barriers in terms of, say, regulatory issues in the North American industry? Are there any facing you at the moment?
Currently, working with ketamine is actually not a problem. Ketamine has been an approved medicine in Canada and the US, I think worldwide, since the 60s or 70s. It's actually quite well established as being very safe and very effective as an anesthetic primarily, but we're seeing transformative results with ketamine-assisted therapy right now. What we see with the patients coming into our centers is that their improvements will go from severe depression scores to mild depression scores, and those benefits last for 120 days. And because this is just a prescription medicine that any doctor is qualified to prescribe by and large, there hasn't been many regulatory issues. When it comes to doing the research around psilocybin and MDMA, because these are scheduled medicines, it is a little bit more challenging, but the government actually seems to be quite progressive. The FDA has given both psilocybin and MDMA breakthrough therapy designation, which means it goes to the top priority in terms of review as well as support when it comes to the clinical trials. So even though you'd expect there to be a lot of regulatory hurdles, the regulatory landscape is actually remarkably favorable.
That's interesting. I mean, it's obviously very good news to you, and perhaps most people would not expect that, but it is really great to hear, and it is obviously proving that you're in a very good space indeed. And Ronan, I'd like to ask you, what can we look forward to seeing from Field Trip Health in 2022?
Yeah, for sure. Well, our focus is continuing to improve the operational efficiency of our existing clinic footprint and expand to new service offerings. So we recently launched what we call site management services, which enable us to not only treat patients, but also enables us to support clinical trials for other companies that may be developing new molecules. We're also working on getting FT104 into our phase 1 clinical trials, as well as working on ideally identifying a lead candidate for our FT200 series, which is a class of molecules that have a favorable profile relative to psilocybin and MDMA in terms of what receptors they hit in the brain. So those are our focuses right now, staying really disciplined on executing on our clinical strategy as well as the drug development.
That's amazing. It sounds like you have your work cut out for you there and a very bright year ahead, especially with the FT104. It looks like it'll be a game changer for you as well as the whole psychedelics industry.
Absolutely. That's the plan and that's the hope.
Well, we look forward to seeing everything the next couple of years have in store for you. But with that said, it's been really great to hear insights today, Ronan. Thanks very much for making time for us in Executive Corner Expert Talks.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you on, and thanks for your time as well, viewers. If you've just joined us, that was Ronan Levy, the co-founder and executive chairman of Field Trip Health. They're doing some incredible work in this space. Have a look. As we say here as well, stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.